When I finished my PhD, Michael Saunders, who had been a colleague in the computer science department, he got his PhD in '72, I think, and then he went back to New Zealand, was going to come back to Stanford. And there was a group in the operations research department, which George Danzig ran, called Systems Optimization Lab. And they wanted to hire people to do research. And I wanted to stay at Stanford, partly for family reasons. And so they said, well, would I like to have a research associate position in that department? Now, people say to me now, you should never have done that. That was a terrible move. It's an inferior job. Why did you do it? Well, I did it. So I went to work in the operations research department in this so-called systems optimization lab, where there was no lab and there was really hardly anybody. It was just George Danzig. And then Philip and Walter were not happy at the National Physical Lab, so we arranged to get some money to pay them, and they came, and then Michael came back from New Zealand.
Right, the famous gang of four.
The famous gang of four, Gill, Murray, Saunders, and Wright. So we were all in the operations research department working on optimization with George Danzig as the person in charge. And I did that from '76 to '88. Okay. Let me first say a word about George Danzig.
I was just going to say. One
of the great sweethearts of all time. You knew him, right? I mean, he was a great man and totally modest and low-key. People used to come to the department and say, I want to meet the famous Professor Danzig. And sometimes he would hide in his office and he would say, I don't want to meet them. I can't do this today, be the famous Professor Danzig. And so I learned so much from watching him be extremely effective. People used to joke that he's putting on an act. He's pretending to be a sweet man, but he's really manipulative. I never believed that, but he certainly got a lot done, acting like a sweet person. I think he was a sweet person. But he was a giant figure, and you know, I'm so thrilled that I was able to work with him and actually call him George. It took me years to work up to that. I kept calling him Professor Danzig, and one day he said, why are you doing this? Why don't you call me George? And I said, all right, George.
But you also called him GBD.
That was behind his back. That was behind his back. That was the nickname, affectionate nickname we had for him. He was great, but you know, he had a certain view of linear programming. He wasn't so interested in nonlinear optimization, which is what the rest of us, except for Michael, tended to do. But he was very supportive. He didn't care. He helped us in every possible way. So I can't imagine a better person to run a lab.
And you must have got to know Dick Cottle then, too.
Yes, Dick Cottle was also in the operations research department, a very low-key but wonderful man. So there were a lot of famous people in the operations research department as well. A big difference, however, and I've just talked about computer science and the students participate in everything. In the OR department, students didn't participate in anything. They were not asked to do anything. They were not part of anything. And one of the faculty members there once came to me and said, Margaret, I hear you're the Che Guevara of the computer science department. I thought, what? And he said, could you do that here? And I said, what do you mean?
One of the students came to say that?
No, Vasek Fatal.
Oh, Vasek.
Yes, and he said, could you be the Che Guevara here? And I said, I don't think so, because the faculty they had no concept of this being possible.
Well, why couldn't he do it?
He was about to leave. I think and also he was only half in OR. He was
half in
computer
science.
Half in CS and OR.
Yeah, he was a character, or he is a character.
Right. So another thing that I did, I'll just mention, is I had wanted to teach. So after I got my PhD, they needed someone in computer science to teach the elementary numerical analysis course, which I did. And in fact, Marcia Berger was one of the students in that class. And I loved it. I thought that was great, you know, that I could present this material that I find very exciting.
Did you teach in OR too?
I taught a few OR classes, more advanced classes than optimization.
Did you teach linear programming, for instance?
No. I taught nonlinear optimization. There were other people to teach linear programming, such as George.
And who else do you remember from those days of the faculty in OR?
Well, it had the same property that CS did in a way, which is lots of famous people came to visit. So Herb Scarf from Yale was one of the people that came. Christos Papadimitriou actually had a 50% appointment in the OR department, so he was around a lot. It was a very lively place. I personally felt they should have had the students involved more. That was my one sort of concern about it.
It turned out it was a great job, but at the same time, it probably became increasingly frustrating, perhaps, that you weren't in a regular faculty position. Is that right?
Right. So other people have given harsher descriptions of my position than I have. A good friend of mine described it as a dead-end position, which I don't
Turned out not to be.
I know, but it might have seemed to be, because research scientists, research associates were not faculty members. They didn't have voting privileges, they didn't have tenure, and so on and so forth. So there were 4 of us. I was in some sense the most junior. I had the most recent PhD. Because I was a female, people frequently would say to me, "Are you the programmer?" And of course, I never knew what to say. If I just said, "How dare you ask me that?" it looked too defensive. If I said no, they may have thought I was making it up. And so in the mid-'80s, I kind of let it be known by talking to people that I might be interested in leaving, which was a wrench. It was a terrible wrench. But I sometimes think really important decisions usually are a wrench. You know, if you're leaving something to do something better, it's sometimes not easy. So I made it known that I was interested in leaving, and a number of people said, did I want to apply for jobs at their institution?
Including Bell Labs?
Including Bell Labs, including Wisconsin, including a few other places. And finally I just thought, all right, I'll go to Bell Labs. I thought it would be different, and I was able to take a leave from Stanford, you know, hedge your bets, so I could go back if I wanted to. But really, practically immediately when I got to Bell Labs, I loved it and decided that it was the right choice, although if I'd gone to Wisconsin, that probably would have been fine also.